everybody, I'm Adama from Team NDL, and welcome to a new type of video that I didn't really see any YouTuber do, which is kind of a shame. We're going to do star rating for sets, which is kind of like doing star rating to kind of like understand cards, going over all archetypes and new cards, just kind of like give you guys really quick reviews of all over the entire set. So when I'm going to do the OCG core sets, which are going to also arrive with TCG and the Coalition of Start, which we'll get to that when we'll get to that, it's going to be longer videos. But overall, very interesting, I think, idea that I don't see how a lot of people do. I do think star rating and just rating archetype and kind of like people kind of understand how the archetypes works in very short is something important. I don't see how a lot of YouTubers do. I will leave, of course, times there so you guys can check the archetype that you want, because we do have 3 ones to cover up. And essentially, just what I will say about the archetype is the way that it functions. Also, there is going to be a star system based on the things that help from another YouTuber as well. He kind of like helped me. He's also a friend of my Discord server, which we'll get to that in a second. He kind of helped me perfect this, so this is the way that I'm going to rate cards to kind of you guys to understand. And like I said, Discord server. There's a Discord server by me, as well as other friendly YouTubers, so if you want to, you're more than welcome to check them out. They will leave their links if they want to in the comments. I will leave one myself in the comments in the description, so if you want to join my Discord server, it's going to take a little bit of time to build up because, you know, it's been opened like 2 to 3 days ago. You're more than welcome to join it. But yeah, it's okay and kind of lively for the number of people we actually got. And yeah, so let's get started, shall we? So for the set itself, you have 3 particular archetypes. You have the rock synchros, which are called Adamanticipator or whatever. These particular guys are also named, I'm going to name them Adama, which are Earth in Hebrew, which I think is really cool. You have Snowflower, which are called Rika in the so-called, what are called, the TCG land, which is a pretty stupid name, but whatever. And then you have also Eldlich, which I think are the only one that kept their name, and they're really good zombie spell and trap based archetype. So that's pretty cool. So let's get started with the one with the serial number first. We'll start off with the Adama archetype. So for the Adama archetype, you kind of have a square, which is 3 columns and 3 lines for the monsters themselves, for the synchros, for the tuners, and for the crystals. And you also have columns for fire, wind, and water. Now, for the fire column, you're going to be working with monsters that like to work with the cards from the archetypes themselves, or monsters from the archetypes. From the wind one is working with rock monsters generally, and for the water ones is just additional nice effects. And this archetype is really good with its effect, which we'll get to see in a second, and the archetype is really powerful. It has particular 2 playstyle, which either OTK, FTK, I think also with Gem Knights, but you could use it for a little bit of a control. Kind of not really that recommended, but you could do that, of course. Anyway, let's get started with the monsters themselves. So starting things off with the tuner lineup, we'll start off with the fire, with all of them actually having 3 effects, and we'll start with fire later. All of them have the same effect, which is, well, during the main phase, if you control them, you get to exhibit 5 cards of your deck, which is the entire gimmick of the archetype, exhibition effects, and you get to pretty much pick 1 level 4 or lower rock monsters that is also not a tuner, and special summon it, which is pretty nice. However, they also have an additional particular effect to special summon themselves, depending on their column. The fire-related tuner gets to special summon itself when you control an Adama monster. The wind one, in the wind column, is pretty much when you control a rock monster, and the water one if your opponent control a monster. So I would say the water one is probably the weakest one out of the 3, but still very useful. 3 stars, then same goes for the fire one, and then for the wind one, 4 stars. This card is pretty much the best card in the archetype. Actually, I would actually up this for 5 stars because this is the core card of the archetype. You have this card, it's pretty much the best one to open with, and it's just really strong. As for the crystals, all of them again share the same secondary effect that if they're in the graveyard and you have the attribute related synchro monster on the field or in graveyard, you get to put that synchro monster back into your extra deck and then put the crystal itself on the top of your deck, so then you can either activate it later for a particular effect and kind of getting the activation benefit. So that's pretty nice. However, they also have an additional effect themselves. For the fire one, if you get to special summon it, you get to put a card from your hand or graveyard related to the archetype on the top of your deck. With the wind one is a rock monster, and with the water one is draw a card. I'm going to rate the two crystals. I'm going to rate the wind and the fire one 2 stars. Again, I'm not saying those cards are bad. They're really okay, but the point is their first effect doesn't really matter that much. They're more of like, oh, if you have them special summon. You most of the time don't really use, especially the fire one, immediately. Even the wind one, like you don't use them immediately during your turn, so they're kind of on the weaker side. However, the water one is 4 stars because drawing a card is always good. You play this one 3-off guaranteed. The 2 hours are kind of more of a 2-offs. Some people play them as a 3-offs, but the water one is guaranteed 3-off, so that's really important. As for the synchros, again, all of them have the same secondary effect. If you have in your graveyard a correlated attribute monster, so the crystals, you get to activate a particular effect during your opponent's turn. In the fire one's case, you get to special summon a rock monster. In the wind one case, you get to pretty much banish a card from your opponent's graveyard, and in the water one's case, you get to negate a spell or trap. So in this particular one's case, I will rate the two ones that are like not the water, rate them 3 stars. I will go over their effects in a second why. And then the water one I'm going to rate 4 stars, because already in those effects, the water one, let's face it, is the best. However, for the fire one, for his first effect, it does let you to search a particular archetype card by activating the top 5 cards of your deck and add one of them to your hand, and then put the rest in the bottom. And the wind one does let you to special summon a rock monster from the top 5 you activated. However, once again, I do think the water one blow them out of the water if you're going second. This one lets you to bounce up to 5 cards, depending on how many rock monsters you revealed. You don't add anything to your hand or special summon it, but you get to bounce up to 5 cards. Not targeting, by the way. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's why I think this is the best synchro out of all the 3. But the 2 other synchros are pretty much decent, so you can use them, and you can just climb with them, which is pretty nice. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for them. And the water one, like I said, is so powerful that there are some people that actually consider to run this in decks that will have a water monster in your graveyard. So, do keep an eye for that. Now we'll move on to the spells and traps, where things are starting to get interesting. We'll start off with the normal spell. The normal spell is pretty much a monster reborn for rocks, and if you use it to special summon Adama monster, you get to put a rock monster on the top of your deck, which is level 4 lower. So already a good card. I wouldn't say it's 5 stars material, but I would say 4 stars. Definitely, it's a monster reborn. It's a good card generally. I would say like Monster Reborns did become a little bit weaker, like Monster Reborn's target effects are a little bit weaker, but it does have a benefit on top of it, which is pretty nice. And it's also just good in any rock deck, so even if you want to try your Croc and Mirrors again, will be really nice. And if in the future we'll have another rock archetype, again, pretty nice. As for the so-called other spell, Field Spell 1 star, I don't like that card whatsoever. I would say this, as a card, if it was the Field Spell for Flower Guardian, this card would be absolutely insane, but as it stands as its own, it's really bad. The fact that you need to choose 5 cards from your archetype, put them on the top of your deck, and you don't get to add one to your hand or something, is really bad. It's the fact that it's not a searcher, it's just like, oh, stack cards, which is something that you don't really need anyway, because seeing 5 cards is a lot for most of the effects, and most of the effects will hit their target anyway. This card is just really not that great. As for the traps, I'm going to rate the Relief 3 stars and the counter one 2 stars. I think the counter one is pretty nice, but it's pretty specific. It does require you to control a synchro monster, and it's only negating monster effect, kind of to complete the Water Zuma one effect, a Water Synchro, which I kind of don't really like, because I do think we should have got the Water Synchro to negate everything, as well as maybe just this to also do another effect that kind of like negate additional stuff on top in a different way, so the archetype will kind of be more powerful in terms of protection. But regardless, that's what we got. As for the other trap, which is Relief for some reason, That card is actually pretty good. It's a weird combination between Ritual Beast Steeds and Shiranui Spectral Slash, or whatever that's called. I forgot the name of that, but you know the one I'm talking about, and we'll show them on screen. That one specifically, it's kind of working in the way that like you tribute a monster, like any attribute, like any so-called Adama monsters, and then you pop cards from your opponent's side of the field up to +1 of the ones you pop. So you can pop one card, just like Spectral Sword or whatever, like the Shiranui Trap, and then just pop 2 cards. You don't get to banish a zombie or whatever, but still pretty good effect. But it also works in kind of way like Steeds, because it just pop up to stuff. So that's pretty nice. Good trap. I wish that we got something better, but regardless, a pretty good trap nonetheless. Now we'll move on to the so-called Snowflower archetype, which I would say this. They're looking one of the best artworks I ever seen, however, their effects are not that great. So we'll start off with the level 1. The level 1 says that during the main phase, you get to pretty much either add a Snowflower card or send it to the graveyard, or should I say monster, but you do lock yourself for plants for the rest of the turn, which is not really that matter for this archetype. However, it does have a nice benefit in the graveyard. When it's in your graveyard during the end phase, you get to pretty much, well, how should I say this? Get to so much during your opponent's turn, add like special summon it to your field if you control a plant or don't control any more monsters. So that's really cool, giving you the ability to maybe recycle this if it's in your graveyard. Now we'll move on to the level 4s. We'll start off with the great level 4, or should I say the good level 4. The good level 4 giving you the ability to tribute it from your hand or field, but you also have to reduce up to 2 plant monsters by 2 levels. You cannot reduce a level 1 or a level 2 to 0, so it doesn't really work on that regard, so do keep that in mind. But it's nice that it's also giving you the ability to tribute in your hand. And during the main phase, the turn it was tributed, you get to pretty much special summon it back from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. Which is pretty nice effect, right? But the problem is its pair can miss timing, because its pair says if you have attributed, like a plant monster was tributed on the field, you get to special summon it from your hand and increase 2 plant monsters by 2 levels. So the problem with those two is that if you have the good level 4 tributed, she pretty much not going to have a quick effect to special summon herself to make the bad level 4 kind of work together with it. So yeah, it's not really that great. So I'm just going to rate the bad level 4 2 stars, the good level 4 also going to rate it 2 stars. This pair is pretty much one of the worst one out of all of them. It's getting better right now as we'll level up, but still not that greatest. Also, I think I forgot to rate the so-called level 1. I'm going to rate it 3 stars. It's, again, one of the best cards of the archetype, which is kind of sad. Now we'll move on to the level 6s, because in the level 6s we actually have a pretty good one. We have the one that can pretty much tribute a plant monster and then special summon itself from the hand, and if it was special summoned by the effect of plant monster, you get to search a Snowflower spell and trap. It's pretty nice, but it's not really the strongest effects because the spells and traps are not that great, but the fact that it's a special summoner immediately, and the fact that it's giving you this kind of an effect, I would say it's one of the better so-called Snowflower cards. So I'm going to rate this one 4 stars. As for the other one, it's kind of a weird hand trap for, you know, plants for attacking. It's kind of like if your plant monster is involved by battle, you get to discard it or tribute it. I don't remember which one of the two. I think it's tributed. Regardless, it's getting to do that, and then you pretty much get 1,000 attack and defense on that monster until the end of the turn. And then if it's in your graveyard and the monster was tributed, I think not including itself, so that's why I think it's also discard effect, not tributing. But it's pretty much give you the ability to special summon it, but banish it when you leave the field. I don't think this effect is that great. You do have to put with the level 1 it's in your graveyard to actually be even beneficial. So I'm going to rate this one 2 stars again. I see this card being a little bit more useful than the 2 level 4s, because I do think the 2 level 4s are a little bit less flexible on some points. Maybe the good level 4 is a little bit more flexible. You know what I mean? It's like, it's okay more than the bad level 4, but it's still not on the great side. However, the level 8 is pretty much the best one in the archetype. I'm going to rate this one 4 stars already. Because this good level 8 monster allow you to pretty much tribute a plant monster and then special summon itself and another plant monster from your hand. But for the rest of the turn you can only special summon plant monsters. However, you do get the ability to pretty much across your entire board to make all your plant monsters the same level of the one that you chose. So for example, if you have a level 6 that you want, you make it all of your monsters into a level 6. So this one, like I said, it's a 4-star card. It's really good. It's no-brainer, free copies of, because it's so good for the archetype. You don't really care about anything else that is not a plant, and just generally overall a good card. As for the bad level 8, it's pretty much one of the best bad ones. This one, when your opponent activates a monster effect that target monsters you control, while you control a Snowflower monster, as a quick effect, which is pretty nice, I guess, you get to tribute this card from your hand or face up on your field, and then you get to negate that effect. And if this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 plant monster and special summon this card in defense position, but banish it once leave the field. So, I would say this one is better than the level 6 one because it's a little more of a protection effect, so I'm going to give this one 3 stars. I do think it's a little bit better than the level 4s overall, because when you Foolish Barrel this one, you do get a benefit, so you could tribute the level 1 that you don't want. Like, you get the effect of the level 1, sends this to your graveyard, special summon this from your graveyard immediately, and then if you have one of the level 8s in your hand, the other one you get to special summon it and do whatever you want. So overall, I think this one is a little bit on the better side and also kind of have like a little bit of a protection effect. As for the plant Xyz, or should I say the Snowflower Xyz, we start off with the better one, which is surprisingly the rank 6 one. This one says if a monster is tributed, except during the damage step, you get to detach a material from this card and target 1 monster in either player graveyard, special summon it, negate its effect, but also it's become a plant monster. So that's pretty cool. And then if a plant monster you control would be destroyed by battle of a card effect, you get to tribute 1 plant monster from your hand or field instead. So you either get to activate your monster effects, you get to either steal your opponent monster and maybe use that for the tributing effect. It's just really good overall. However, the rank 8 one is not one of the great ones, and it's actually not that great. But for this one, I'm going to give 4 stars. I think overall, it is a solid overall card and a payoff for the archetype. As for the rank 8, I think this one's a little bit better than what people essentially think, but I do think it's a little bit bad. I'm just going to rate this one 2 stars. I think it's okay, because its effect says that detach a material and tribute a monster on the board. It doesn't have to be your monster, so you can target 1 monster on the field, tribute it, and then as a quick effect, if you have a plant monster as material. So for the first time, it's essentially going to be a quick effect. So this effect could work in Lair. I do think of maybe trying this deck in Lair, but I'm not really sure about this. However, this effect is the only good one. The second one is like when a monster is distributed, you're getting 200 attack. So the problem with this one is that while the effect is pretty nice, I do think the fact that like you have to have a plant monster as a material could miss timing. I mean, in the archetype it's okay, but only for one time. But the problem is as well as like the benefit from it only getting like 200 attack every single time a monster is distributed is actually kind of bad. But overall, not the worst Xyz monster to go into. I would say the rank 6 is a little bit better, but the rank 8 is not bad overall. For the spells, we have one good one, and one bad one. You have the one that is pretty much the normal one. When you activate this card, you can also tribute a plant monster and then add 1 Snowflower from your deck to your hand. And if you tributed a monster, when you activate this effect, you can add a plant monster with the same original level of that monster. So you're essentially able to search the 2 monsters of the same level that you want. So for example, if you tributed like the level 1, you get to pretty much search the 2 level 6s if you want them, which is pretty nice. And yeah, it's okay, I guess. And then that's pretty much it for that. It's a pretty excellent card. I'm going to rate this one 4 stars. I would say this archetype is an archetype that, like, how should I say this? It does have really good cards, but overall as an archetype, it's not really the strongest in terms of ceiling. but I do think it does have some potential with a little bit more effects for that one. As for the continuous spell, this card is that if your Snowflower is tributed, except during the damage step, you can make your opponent tributed a monster. They control their choice. And then during the end phase, if you control a non-plant monster, you destroy this card. So I would say initially this card is 1 star, even though it does have a nice effect for forcing your opponent to tribute when you tribute. It's also kind of bad because the fact that you kind of have to, how should I say this? Oh yeah, you have to control a plant monster and not control non-plant monsters, so you cannot really incorporate anything anywhere else. As well for the fact that your opponent get to choose what monsters they want to tribute whenever this good was as an effect. Again, it's tributing, so it's a little bit better, but I don't think it's that perfect. I would say this is an archetype that I will enjoy and probably pick up, but I do think this card is pretty much the weaker one out of the cards that you have for spells right now. For the traps, we have one pretty much okay trap, which is the good trap, and when you activate that card, you get to tribute a plant monster, special summon one. You actually, it's like the first spell. You get to maybe, if you want to tribute a plant monster, then special summon Snowflower monster from your graveyard in defense position, and then if you tribute a monster for activating this effect, you get to special summon 1 plant monster from your graveyard in defense position. So you get to either 1 monster reborn if you don't tribute, or 2 monster reborns if you tribute. So I'm going to rate this one 2 stars. I do think this card is really good, but you have to understand one thing. This is not really the best card in the world. I do understand that it's a monster reborn, but this archetype doesn't really need monster reborn to essentially function, so I do think this card is one of the weaker side. It is 1 copy regardless, but I don't think it's one of the stronger cards of the archetype. So, as for the last trap, you have another trap that kind of works like the normal spell. You get to target a face-up monster your opponent control. Also, you contribute 1 plant monster, and then players cannot activate face-up monster effect on the field to this turn, which is kind of giving you kind of a skill drain effect, I guess. And if you tributed a monster when you activate this effect, take control of that monster until the end of the turn, and until the end phase. And if you do, it's become a plant monster until the end phase. So this one is essentially kind of become kind of a skill drain for a particular monster, and if you did tribute a monster, you get control of that monster until the end of the turn, which is okay. It is nice, kind of getting kind of a skill drain effect, or should I say effect veiler effect, with an additional benefit, but it is a trap, so I would say this card is only 2 stars. Again, it's not bad by any means, but it just kind of, depending on the situation, it's a good trap to search nonetheless, and I do think it's better from the previous one, but overall, I do think, once again, it's not really the strongest one. So overall, the plant archetype Snowflower is not a bad archetype. It is the weakest one out of the 3, but I wouldn't say that it's bad overall. I do think it still have some particular cards that are pretty excellent, pretty useful, and pretty nice. But like I said again, it's the weaker one. And you could combine it with Lair if you're smart enough, which I will probably try to do, as well as just generally it's going to be the cheapest one, and like I said, not a bad option if you just love those waifu cards, as well as just generally want an archetype that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. As for the final archetype, and probably the strongest one out of the 3, because it's not really an archetype per se, it's more of an engine, we're talking about the eldlich archetype, which does split up for 2 particular categories, and then a 3rd category, which is just the rest of the cards. So the 2 categories that you have is the Golden Land cards and the Elixir cards. And the 3 other cards that you have are cards that just don't work with those, and either pay off cards or just work with them as in general. So we'll start off with the main deck monster, the only one that you have in the archetype, Golden Lord. Golden Lord is a very excellent monster. By itself, if you use both of his effects, is just a 0, you don't get any negs. It's kind of like if you activate during your opponent, going second, because if it's in your hand, you get to discard it and another spell and trap. and then just send a card your opponent control to the graveyard, or just any card on the field to the graveyard. Doesn't target, doesn't destroy. Very excellent already. However, it's also have a graveyard effect to send a face-up spell or trap you control to the graveyard to pretty much add it back to your hand. And then special summon a zombie that is getting 1,000 attack and defense, and also cannot be destroyed by your opponent until the end of the turn, which is really powerful. Being able to maybe even boost this one to 4,000 is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, it's pretty nice. So it's kind of an ending if you're using both effect during going second. It's kind of ending up like, you know, no negs. Trust me, it's okay. But anyway, this is pretty much a good monster. I'm going to rate this one 4 stars. I think this card is really powerful, but it's not the cornerstone. The cornerstone of the deck, or should I say the center stone, is the continuous spell, which I'm going to preactively just rate 5 stars. This card is absolutely ridiculous in the center of the entire archetype. This card gives you the ability to pretty much, you activated this, and during your main phase you get to pretty much pay 800, search either Golden Lord himself or Golden Land card. But if it wasn't enough and your opponent activated an Ogre on this or something, and you're still getting a benefit, because its other effect is, if it sends to the graveyard, you get to either send a Golden Lord or a Golden Land spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard. And I'm pretty sure these effects both can work in the same turn, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that you can do this with Golden Lord himself, so again, super ridiculous. Really powerful effect. But before we'll jump on into the Golden Land cards themselves, I want to talk about the trap that is supposed to be the benefit of running multiple copies and all the cards themselves, and after you banish them, which we'll get to that in a second as well. The trap that does that does have 2 effects, but I'm going to rate it 1 star immediately. You're going to see what I mean, because the first effect, which is probably the better one, you get to shuffle 3 elixir spell and trap from your banished pile into your deck, and then pretty much, how should I say this, pop the entire opponent's board, or I would say the entire board, but yeah, it's pretty much going to be your opponent's board. And then the other effect is that you get to shuffle 3 Golden Land cards, and then half your opponent's life, and gain the thing that you halve them with. Like, you know, you get the current life after the halving the life. I don't know why it just didn't say half the life and gain that amount. I don't know why. But regardless, this card is just a benefit, but it does come a little bit too slow, so I do think it's a 1-star card. It just okay, I guess. Like I said, it's a nice benefit, maybe to run as a 1 copy, but generally it's just really hard to do, because all of these spells and traps that are Golden Land Old Elixir, which I will get to them in a second, have only used one of the effects per turn. The first effect will be the effect that like you want to use most of the time, and the second effect is the effect that you want to use to search. So going first with them, or should I say use them at the start, you don't want to use that. You don't want to use the graveyard effect unless you really have to, because you want to use their first effect. You want to get their good effect first. Then you want to get their bad effect, which is the grave effect. So only one of them per turn, just keep that in mind. So let's start with the Elixir cards, which all 3 of them, like I said, have this kind of an effect. And their effect in the grave, you banish them from the grave, and you get to add to your hand 1 Golden Land card. Again, you can only use one of the effects per turn. And the better effect is the one that if you don't control a Golden Lord, you get to special summon it from a particular place. But if you do control him, you get to special summon any zombie. But you do stop yourself, or should I say limit yourself to only zombies. However, there are some archetypes for zombies that doesn't really matter for them that. One specifically that a lot of people are talking about is Zombie World. But I would say 2 archetypes that I do think it could work with. Vendread Control, which if you will turn it into more of a tool for zombies, and the decks that I think it's 100% the best with, at least from my experience, is Vampires. Because Vampires do have the same benefits of Zombie World, but they're also vampires. So yeah, you can just slide the good cards of Vampires, which Vampires do get good cards. For anybody who thinks that they don't, they get excellent cards, but the problem was summoning them. With those particular free cards, you get to use them pretty easily. But for the Elixir, you have Black Awakening, which is the normal spell, which gets special summon from your deck or hand. White, which get the special which is this quick play spell, which get the special summon from your hand or graveyard, and then the trap, which is Scarlet, just like Scarlet Duelist, which get the special summon from your graveyard or deck, which is pretty nice. I'm going to rate all of these cards 4 stars across the board. They're all really excellent. And just generally, you do need Elixir Lord, and I think that's why they kind of limit them. But if they didn't limit them, these cards would have been absolutely phenomenal and 5 stars immediately. But the fact that you do need to summon Elixir Lord, or should I say Golden Lord, have it on the board, or just special summon it first, does limit these cards, and that's why they're not getting 5 stars, but they're just excellent cards regardless. As for the Golden Land cards, again, they also have a graveyard effect, which, unlike the Elixir ones, they get to banish themselves during the end phase, and then set one of the Elixir cards on the board. So you do get the ability to choose that during the end phase, and you don't really have to activate it. So it's kind of like more of like, oh, if they're in your graveyard, you just get to set it up. So that's pretty nice. But their first effect is pretty much summoning themselves as traps, except for the counter trap, which doesn't really share those effects with them, because it's separate thing, which we'll get to it. But they're all special summon themselves as a monster, and also still count as a trap. And if you control Golden Lord, they also get an additional effect. In the case of the pirate-looking guy, you get to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard. In the case of the beast thingy, you get to pretty much make it 0 attack. In the case of the Horseman, you get to pretty much pop a face-up card. So I'm going to rate Horseman 3 stars and the 2 Hours 2 stars. Same idea with those as the same as the crystals for Adama archetype. They're all just necessary. They're not the best one. Horseman, I guess, is the best. They're not really amazing, but they are necessary. So I would say they're the weakest links of the archetype, I would say, but just pretty okay, I guess, overall. They're not bad. I would say we could have got worse traps, but I would say this, they're just not that great, especially the 2 stars ones. The one with the 3 stars is pretty acceptable. I wish it was a little bit stronger, and kind of didn't really require you to control Eldlich Lord to activate the effects, but regardless, it is what it is. As for the counter trap, it actually works with those guys really nicely as well, with Golden Lord. If you control an Eldlich monster, it doesn't really have to be the Golden Lord, so the continuous traps could count as a monster, which is pretty nice. You get to pretty much Infernity Barrier anything once per turn, but you have to treat it as a zombie. Excellent, counter trap, 4 stars. This card is really good. It's just good. Even if you don't really play the counter traps that much, or should I say the continuous traps that much, it's still just an excellent card. It is what it is. Just like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the rating for the Eldlich archetype. Overall, excellent zombie engine, and I'm not saying it biased because I'm a zombie lover. I do think this archetype is one of the best we've ever seen in terms of deck buildings, in a while, I would say. Yeah, it's also a really good archetype. It is going to be not that cheap, especially Golden Lord and Black Awakening, but generally, just a good cards overall. And if you do have the money and you want to just build zombie world or vampires with them, you're more than welcome to. I will try to mess with them around as proxies, probably, because quarantine, I'm just not going to waste my money on them. But I do think the quarantine, I would say in advance, probably going to just drop the prices a little bit, because, how should I say this? Oh, there are no original plays. Anyway, I do think that will kind of work to our favor in that regard, but yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So hope you guys enjoyed my star rating. Once again, if you want to see more of these, let me know in the comments down below. I will do some of these for the Coalition of Scrubs if I didn't say, for core sets. Yeah, you could check those out as well when they will come out. They will be handled a little bit differently, but yeah, this is kind of more of a test thing. And let me know your thought in the comments down below. See you guys next time. Stay safe, because this is a really hard time, but hope you guys are doing just well either way. Bye-bye.